Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back with you for the 192nd, count 'em, 192 Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom calls. We are glad to have you with you. We have a packed agenda. As always, it is September 30th, my daughter's 33rd birthday. And the first hour, we're going to be talking about election issues, procedural issues, how the ballots are or are not going to be counted. We're joined by Steve Rosenfeld, one of the country's leading experts on all this. And Steve is going to take us for a state-by-state excursion into what we're facing in the swing states. John Steiner, you got a hand real quick? Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
David Nevins will be with us coming on at 2:30, ready at 2:40.
Okay, thank you so much. That's great. Ray McClendon will be joining us, John BRAKEY. We are going to deal with procedural issues on the balloting and other stuff. We also want to discuss the potential impact of this horrendous hurricane, which has especially hit North Carolina, probably the key swing state. We don't want to focus just on what its impact will be on the election, but it could be crucial. In the second hour, we're going to talk about energy. We're going to deal with wind power. Also, Gavin Newsom's incredible attack on solar energy. Gavin Newsom has become the number one opponent of solar power in the country, at least in terms of tangible impact. And we're going to be joined by Kevin Camps and Tim Judson to talk about this, this utterly insane idea of reviving dead nukes. I have a Corvair up on blocks in the front yard that I was thinking of reviving. It's only 50 years old. What could go wrong? So we're going to deal with that with energy in the second hour. Very, very critical time here. But of course, it's a critical time in the election. I do want to commemorate Marcellus Williams. Marcellus Williams was more or less the 1600th person put to get death by the death penalty in this country. And I just want to wonder out loud here how anyone can claim to be pro-choice and I'm sorry, pro-life and simultaneously support the death penalty. I mean, this is a nonpartisan shout out. I mean, you got 6 justices, so-called, on U.S. Supreme Court who are vehemently opposed to abortion, to women's reproductive health care, and claim to use the term pro-life. And then they have just, within the last week, turned down all the appeals to spare the life of Marcellus Williams, whose alleged victim, the alleged victim's family asked that he not be executed. And the prosecutors involved with the case asked that he not be executed. And yet the so-called pro-life Supreme Court that were so sanctimonious about protecting the lives of the unborn go ahead 6-3 and approve the execution of Marcellus Williams. So I'm completely outraged by this. There is no excuse for the death penalty whatsoever. All it is legalized murder. And, it's just, to me, completely outrageous. Steve Caruso?
Yeah, so Friedman last week had a show about Trump's retribution and all the things that he did while he was in office and iterated them out. And it was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And now there's the premonition he's going to do it again. Of course, not a premonition, but an actual happening. He's planning it if he gets into office. So,
okay,
all those things that you see going on as retribution in our society are on the increase. And this is just something else we have to fight with, obviously. Thanks.
Okay, and we are technically nonpartisan. I will highly recommend the very nonpartisan cold opener to Saturday night's Saturday Night Live show. It was very funny, and I'm glad to see Maya Rudolph back playing Kamala Harris. So if you want to laugh, and it was definitely a nonpartisan laugh, you can go ahead and take a look. We have 32, 33 people with us, and we want to go in with Steve Rosenfeld. Steve is one of and we're going to deal with the mechanics of the election, which has been our theme. We're also for more than 4 years now, and we are joined by the great Ray McClendon in Georgia. My condolences on the Falcons. It was a good game, though. Let's go ahead, Steve. If you can give us what you know, state by state, what's happening with the protection of our elections, that would be really great.
Well, hi, thank you for inviting me to do this. Let me start very succinctly by just saying what I think is the overall landscape in the swing states, and then we can talk about different states as people have questions. So it's not a one-way, like a one-way conversation here. So, what is the landscape in the states? And there's really two things to look at. There's the legal landscape, which is what's going to happen in courts. And there's the administrative landscape, which is who has power to rewrite the rules and procedures at the last minute. So if you look at today's New York Times, the print edition, online yesterday, there's an outbreak of litigation in all of the battleground states. And most of this is stuff that is a sign of desperation by people who are afraid of losing. And, there's some on the Democratic side that says, let's try to figure out ways to get more ballots counted. But mostly it's put forth by the Republican National Committee. And then there's in every presidential swing state, with the exception of Georgia, the people who control the election apparatus are non-Trump Republicans or Democrats. So I'm talking about secretaries of state, attorney generals, governors. There are Republican legislative majorities in some of those states, but the people who control the apparatus are Democrats. And several of those states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, they have same-day registration. So that's all very positive, and that's overlooked in the mainstream media for the most part because there's the fear that something will go wrong and something will have traction. So what's likely to happen? I think we have to just understand that the speed of claims and falsehoods that do not have to be backed up by evidence will be lightning fast in the media, whereas what happened, or the court of public opinion, versus what happens in courts of legal opinion, where you have to present evidence, and there's going to be a gap in that period. And in most cases, what the Republican National Committee is doing is they're making the same arguments with somewhat new details. And if they don't do anything different than the past, they're going to lose. So all the claims about illegal voters and bad voter rolls and can't trust absentee ballots without getting these have been litigated before. They haven't presented evidence, and they've lost in front of Democratic and Republican judges. But, and this is the big but, there's going to be a time gap between election day, election night, and when things get to that legal venue. And that's where first impressions, misinformation. What do I mean by misinformation? You have people who mistakenly think they see something, but they make a mistake, or they misunderstand something, or they misrepresent it, or they forward they believe a rumor and they send it on social media. And then there are people who contort and distort and lie intentionally. So the speed of all that stuff is going to be really fast, and it's going to be a void that it will fill between the time these elections are actually settled. So what's happening? It looks like most of these lawsuits and these interventions are probably going to lose, because election lawyers call them press releases with filing fees. But they are designed to manipulate press coverage, where the press will say a lawsuit has been filed, and then it's like false equivalencies. They'll say, okay, we got to have the pro and the con. Well, one side is making up stuff, and another side is trying to defend facts, and the public will get lost on the details. Some judges are likely to rule in favor of the election deniers. We saw this in Michigan in 2020. I don't know if you guys remember Antrim County. So it's then what? So then what happens? So then we fast forward to the finish line, and we have to see what the Electoral Count Act, which was rewritten after 2020, really bans and forbids. And and some of this we can look at pieces that are explanatory, And they'll say things like, well, if a state like Wisconsin, call it 10 electoral count votes, doesn't file in time, then you don't need 270 to win, you need 265. And then there are limits on how state legislatures cannot go rogue. They have to have their slate of electors for each party in place on election day. And if they try to change it, it can be taken to court very quickly and it can be challenged in Congress. But a lot of that has not been tested, which is a lawyer's dream. You look for stuff where you think, well, maybe we can just keep throwing stuff at it and maybe get our way. So I can go into different states, but really what you've got here is a tsunami of claims that are based on mostly old issues. And when you go to the state of Georgia, what you see is something very different. This is not lawsuits. This is the legislature gave election administrators authority to alter the rules, the procedures. And they're doing it at the last minute, not to make the process fairer or more transparent. They're doing it to create chaos because they know that chaos, they're trying to manufacture issues and noise that can be used to discredit the process. If they didn't want to discredit the process, they would have done some of this stuff in the last 2 years, not the last 2 months of an election. So instead of just being so negative, I just want to point out that the solution here is higher turnout, because there's been no statewide election since 2004 where the margins have been, when I'm talking about for governor, U.S. senator, and president, where more than 500 or 700 votes have been reversed in a recount or a court challenge. You might remember Al Franken, that was less than 400 votes. So if the turnout is high, all these attempts to manufacture issues and these microaggressions that the people might want to turn into like macro constitutional crises will get washed away. And I'll just leave it there for now. If you want to talk about specific states and specific things, we can go into those weeds, but we really should just look at the big picture here. The legal landscape favors Democrats, except for Georgia. But there's going to be a big gap between election day and the time the facts come out. And that's where the misinformation and propaganda will fill it. Turnout is the solution.
Okay, very interesting, Steve. And again, Steve is one of our great experts on this for the past 20 years. I was just talking with Ray about an hour ago, who pretty much agrees with what you're saying. Ray, you're in Georgia. I want to point out, by the way, of the 7 swing states, which are Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, 5 have Democratic governors. The 2 that don't are Georgia and Nevada. Now, Ray, you're in Georgia. Do you want to comment on what Steve has said? He's mentioned Georgia a couple times.
No, I substantially agree with what Steve has said. Without getting into the minutia, we need to stay at the big picture here about why this is happening. What's the objective? The objective is not integrity of elections, fair counts, any of that. The Republican and MAGA objective here is to sow chaos and confusion and undermine faith in the democratic process. That's what's going on here. And so what we have to do is we've identified the problem. We've made sure folks are aware of it. People have their eyes on these folks this time around, much different than it was in 2020 when, quite frankly, we here in Georgia, as an example, we were all focused on an election, two runoff elections. So when all of this chaos was going on after the general election in November, we were really focused on still getting the vote out. That's not the case this time. We already have eyes on these folks. The lawyers are already in place at a federal level, state level, and from the grassroots communities as well. So I think now we have a much better grasp on how to defeat this MAGA attempt at undermining the election. So I agree with that. And the other thing is I agree with the fact that we're at the stage now where it's got to be about turnout. We here in Georgia are 2 weeks away from the start of early voting. We have basically a 50-50 race here, a toss-up. And so it's all about turnout. It's all about getting our people to the polls. And we want to early vote. The more early voting that we get done, the better it will be for all of these potential concerns that we're dealing with. In the overall strategy of voter suppression, remember, voter suppression is more than just certification issues and the current chaos. Voter suppression is a long-term, comprehensive strategy that has been put in place in Georgia. And we need to recognize that. So that's people not knowing where their precincts are, people because the precinct locations have been changed, not being enough voting machines, which means lines will be long. We now have got the way that we can combat that, and of course, is to early vote. And of course, one of the other things we have is the undermining of the process by the U.S. Post Office and Postmaster DeJoy. So all of those things are what we need to focus on starting now, recognizing that voting starts in 2 weeks. It's already started in Virginia. It's starting across the South right now. And so the top priority from my perspective needs to be voter turnout.
Well, that's okay. John Steiner has a hand. I think you want to introduce David Nevin, and then we're going to go to John Brakey.
Harvey, that comes a little later.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
2:40, but this is for Ray and for Stephen. Ray, given what we've learned about the hitmen in Georgia and people being expunged from the voting rolls without their knowing it, and having read what I think is accurate, but it may not be, over 700,000 voters in North Carolina, what are you and can we to get in touch with those folks to make sure that they have to re-register if necessary, et cetera?
Well, you got to get messaging out, not just to them, but to all voters, because you don't really have the information on those files. I don't know how the files are set up in North Carolina, but it's difficult to identify them. So what we're doing here in Georgia is a part of our process is when we're approaching anyone, we're telling them to confirm their voter registration. And if there is any question with it, to re-register. So the voter purges are something that we deal with inherently in our messaging and the way that we deal with voters is there's something here in Georgia we call My Voter Page. So when we engage voters, whether they're registered or unregistered, is to get them familiar with the My Voter Page, which gives them an indication of whether or not they are on the rolls, still on the rolls, or in an active status. If it's the same case as it was in Georgia, what they do is they eliminate those voters who are in inactive status, meaning they have not voted in a couple of the most recent elections.
And Ray,
Wow.
does the state Democratic Party jump in to work with you on that? Would we assume there's
No, they don't.
any reason why not?
Because they're Democrats. That's why.
And do we assume whatever efforts can be done or similarly being done in North Carolina and the other battleground states?
I don't know. That's a better question for Andrea. She's closer to that.
Well, we'll invite Andrea Miller to join us next week. Another question before we go to John Brakey. This hurricane has absolutely devastated North Carolina. And Florida. My sister-in-law lost her house in St. Pete. So certainly Florida and by way Georgia, North Carolina. I don't know about rural Georgia, have been devastated by this hurricane. What impact do we think that's going to have on the voter turnout?
Well, I think it's going to have the biggest impact in Florida and North Carolina, as you mentioned. Georgia, we have some challenges, primarily south and east. Fortunately, Atlanta, the metro area, got out of it pretty much unscathed. We had some power outages probably about between 50 and 100,000 power outages in the area, but the storm veered more to the east, and the storm, as any of you know that follow hurricanes know, it's really the northeast quadrant of the storm that packs the most power. And since it veered east, we got some of the westerly winds that are not quite as bad and not as much rain. So we got out of it with some damage, some flooding, but nothing compared to what happened in places like Savannah, Augusta, and Valdosta, where it came. Valdosta, for those who don't know, is Lowndes County. That's down on the Florida-Georgia line, and it's about, maybe 50 miles or so from where the eye of the storm came into Florida. So they got hit very hard. That's where the orange one was today. And by the way, he was soaking up resources unnecessarily, telling lies about the Governor Kemp could not get in touch with the President Biden, et cetera. So it was just a fiasco to have him in Valdosta, Georgia, earlier today with Franklin Graham complaining about the response while he's in the process of soaking up first responder resources for him to come in and have a press conference.
Unbelievable. I want to remind people also that the balloting in North Carolina was disrupted by Bobby Kennedy, who insisted. I don't remember if he wanted to keep his name on it. I think they wanted to remove his name, and then he turned around and sued in New York to keep his name on the ballot. But North Carolina was forced to reprint and send out a whole new round of ballots. And as I think many of you know, and I'll try to present this in a nonpartisan way, if the vote count seems to show that if the expected states go blue and red as expected, the 7 swing states will decide. And apparently, if Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania all go for Harris, she will get exactly 270 votes, which is why this battle over the one vote in Omaha was so significant, and which the Republicans lost, and that Omaha will have its single ballot. And otherwise, the key swing state becomes North Carolina, which is now between the hurricane and the newly mailed ballot, the revised ballot, in chaos already. So I don't know what, that's all up for grabs. Donald, Ruth, and Michael Adler, can you wait, please? Because I do have promised John Brakey in Arizona his time to report, and then we'll call on you. John Brakey, you were not hit by a hurricane in Arizona, but there are certainly questions. We have 41 people on the call, and of course, we are live streamed. What is going on with the process in Arizona?
Well, fortunately, we're not like Georgia, because, Georgia does stand in a particular strange place. Our Board of Elections are the Board of Supervisors, and these are elected officials with staffs. And there was some noise from them last section, because they were put under a lot of pressure, because there are certain counties that are very heavily Republican, and they were responding to their constituents, and maybe they got a little too far over. I don't think that's going to happen again. But I do believe that there is problems. And I think the biggest problem that we're going to have is this, what I got to put on the screen. This I found on a Republican site, not the part about the absent and transparency. It's the bottom part. In the 2020 election, the frame by the Republicans was very childish. It was rigged. It was rigged. In the 24 election, their claim is going to be a non-audible election bears the full prescription of, and all of these things we do because, we live, if I was on the board in Georgia, I would have voted no, you can't do it because you came too late. Okay. But there are concerns there. They are using ballot marking devices. And sometimes people will vote with that ballot marking device. Okay. And then they'll walk out with the goddamn ballot because they think their vote got recorded. And realistically, it is the duty of that precinct or voting center to say, if we had 600 voters, do we have 600 ballots? In Arizona, we usually have one or two more, maybe, okay? Because somebody was forced to vote a provisional and then they snuck around and snuck it in the box. You know what I'm saying? Usually they'll find that because it's a folded ballot and they'll remove it, is what they'll do. And but in Georgia, your boards are not impartial because the way they're appointed, they don't have staff. These are common people who are appointed by the parties, and they're in there to do the party bidding. And if you don't do that bidding, we'll get rid of you. I saw the same thing in North Carolina. It was crazy.
Okay.
It really was. They would vote, and if the Republicans didn't vote the right way, they would remove them, is what they would wind up doing. So basically, I believe that it's going to be a hell of an election. It may not be very, because I do believe Trump is hopefully going to wind up losing. But I thought the same thing in 2016. I couldn't believe when he won that election. Okay. And here I am now, watching this one, and then I'm polling my family and people. They have a religious lock in a lot of these people, and they're getting Democrats to convert over. It's that situation. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I think I ran.
So you commented on the process in Georgia versus Arizona. Ray, did you want to reply to that? And I'm going to call on Steve, Don, Ruth, and Michael. We'll get you next.
Let me just say, in most polling places in Georgia, the process works like this. You walk in, you have to present your ID. Your ID is confirmed, and then you're given a card reader to insert into the voting machine, which are digital. The digital machines, then you then punch in it's a touch screen, and you touch in your selection. You get an opportunity to review, go back, whatever you want to do, and then once you finish, it then will print out your ballot. When your ballot is then printed out, there's a machine that then will scan your ballots. You insert your ballot yourself into the scanner. There's a poll worker that's standing there. You cannot walk past the poll worker with your ballot to get out of the polling area. You must insert your ballot into the machine before, and the poll workers themselves have you confirm that the ballot was properly inserted and that the counter on the machine has changed by one number in order to reflect that your ballot was counted. So that's how the machine process works at polling locations in Georgia.
Wow.
You should have a good count. And I agree with that.
So basically, although we're not happy that it's printed out on the computer, you do have a digitally scanned paper ballot and they retain the paper ballots and they retain the digital scan. So that should be a reasonably decent process, I would guess. Steve Rosenfeld wanted to jump in, then we'll go to Donald Smith, who's been waiting. We got 43 people with us. Steve, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to John Steiner's questions about North Carolina and voter purges. Okay. When you look at that list of 750,000 people who were removed, it said about 300,000 were they had moved and they were duplicate registrations, which in most cases means those people are still registered. So that number of less than 500,000, when you have a state with 7.5 million voters, is pretty much the normal churn when it comes to list maintenance. It's about 10%, and that's historic. And the thing is, the reason I'm saying that is I had heard people say the announcement of this big number was what was political, which was designed to spook people or encourage people. But the actual number itself, you look at this over here where it says moved within state, duplicate 289. So if you have if the average statewide in the states is about 10% in terms of list maintenance, you've actually got it lower than that in this state. So that's just something to be aware of. Like they could have made this announcement in July. Why they do it in September? For political purposes.
Wow.
The thing about the destruction from the storm, this is one of the things that election officials fear the most, which is the literal physical destruction of their warehouses and counting operations and all that apparatus. They have all these newly printed ballots. Maybe they've been delivered and not. They've gotten soaked, they've gotten wet, they can't be used. It's too early in terms of looking at the election press and the election trade blogs and listservs to know exactly what the damage may be. In Florida, there have been, in recent cycles, bad hurricanes in the Panhandle. There have been voting centers that have been consolidated. It didn't delay things too much. This seems like it's a storm of a whole nother magnitude, and we just have to wait and see. The Electoral Count Act says that if there are things like this, like natural disasters or something that really delays the whole process, it will accept a delayed certification from that state. But again, we all have to take a closer look at this Electoral Count Act because it's the finish line rules. And very few people, including me, we don't really know how it's going to operate. But I read some summaries of it this morning, and it said natural disasters, that state things can be delayed a little bit. So I just wanted to say, alarmist headline on purges, not necessarily a historically, unreasonable or unpredictable number. Actual impact from storm damage, we don't know yet. We have to wait and watch that carefully.
We also have to wonder the impact on the Postal Service in North Carolina and how many of those ballots that were adjusted, reprinted, actually were delivered before the storm hit. I mean, I haven't seen any press on that. It would be very interesting to follow that up. Have you?
It's just too early. No.
Okay. We don't know. We don't know yet. And of course, the Postal Service has become such a wild card. Donald Smith, Ruth Strauss, John, did you have a follow-up? Can I go to Donald and then Ruth and then Michael?
Harvey, I just want to let you know that David Nevins is available when you're ready to.
Okay, David will.
Election work he's doing starting in Arizona.
Fantastic, David. Glad to have you with us. We have 43 people. Donald, Ruth, Michael, and then David. Okay, Donald, go ahead.
I think people asked some of my question about yesterday. Greg Palast appeared on the PDA's Sunday meeting, and he made some scary claims about voter purges. Million, on the order of 1 million people purged. So I wonder. Yes. I think you already commented on that, but maybe you can comment on why he's saying that. I mean, is he fear mongering? The other thing is, how about I hear stories about polling places, there not being enough polling places in minority or in democratic areas where students or others minorities are. So comment on those two things.
Well, Greg's work is primarily focused on Georgia, and Ray McClendon has been working with Greg. And also, the purging of voting places is historic. That's been going on since at least 2004 in Ohio, and it has been a pattern, and it's a very partisan pattern. So, Ray, do you want to comment on Greg's work and its impact in Georgia? Thank you for that, Don.
No, I will just say not about Greg's work, but this is a part of a continuing pattern of voter suppression that polling locations, drop boxes, the mandatory maximum number of drop boxes that are available for different counties to be able to place in communities, the lack of infrastructure to properly be resourced to marginalized communities like Black communities continues to be a problem in the largest metro counties. In the rural counties, the issue is that counties can be large, and if they only have one drop box location and 1 or 2 polling locations, typically those are in the county seat, then that means that people have got to drive a long way. They live out in the county in order to go vote. So those are issues that are a part of the legislative strategy from SB 202 and SB 189 that 202 passed a couple of years ago. 189 is passed, that are part of the overall voter suppression strategy of making it more difficult to vote. So that's the bigger issue that we have when you get beyond just purging. It's a comprehensive strategy. The fewer polling locations you have, the longer the lines, the more frustrated people get, and therefore they get discouraged and they leave the line. So
Right.
that's why we have things like parties to the polls, where we set up away from the polling location, because that's something else that they did, was to say that you cannot give water or food or anything to somebody that's standing in line to vote. So we have to set up at least 150 feet away from the polling location in order to be able to assist people. These are the kinds of things that we are doing in order to overcome the suppression tactics that are being employed legally.
It's unbelievable they did that. Thank you for that, Ray, and thank you for the question. Ruth Strauss, Michael Adler, and then we'll go to David, and then we'll go to Mike Hirsch. Go ahead, Ruth.
Okay. Don Smith, you need to watch Vigilante. That's Greg Palast. He has two of them now, the most recent one, but the one before this documented. He has been uncovering voter purging since the election in 2000, and he's got all the goods. There was collusion between Catherine Harris and Chris Kobach. They were putting C's by the names of African American voters as people to challenge. There are now, this thing True the Vote is doing a lot of voter challenging in Ray's state. In fact, it's hysterically funny, but it's also upsetting. At the beginning of his new movie, he shows a woman who has individually herself purged 32,000 votes or challenged rather 32,000 votes in Ray's state. So you need to watch that. And Greg is on the right side of history. But anyway, Ray, wink, wink. I heard Donald Trump on the national news just now say that he brought a lot of supplies to Valdosta. So I don't know what you're talking about. Wink, wink, wink. But anyway.
I think he brought many of the paper towels that he failed to distribute.
That's exactly what I was
Rico.
thinking.
He had some left over from Puerto Rico that he gave
exactly.
to
I was thinking the same thing. But
anyway, thank you.
But wait. The real thing that I wanted to say is that I don't know how helpful this is, but in past elections, there were actually, either by the ACLU or National Lawyers Guild or whatever, numbers that you could call, 800 numbers if you were, or even texting on your phone if you were being challenged improperly or whatever. So anybody who knows anything about that or knows if that could be reinstituted, it might be a good thing. So
thank you,
anyway.
Thanks for that. Thank you very much. Yes, that's great. Michael Adler in Topanga, and then we'll go to David Nevins, and then Mike Hirsch. Go ahead, Michael. You're muted. Hold on. And David Nevins, I'll unmute you. There. Go ahead.
You're right. First, a brief comment in that a lot of the people who are being deleted as duplicates have different middle names. This has been shown in a lot of the things that have been challenged so far. Greg Palast shows it as well. What I really want to know is myself and several other people are willing to help out and volunteer either in Nevada, Arizona, or Georgia, either in person or by telephone, whatever we can do. Where would volunteers most be needed at this point, and how do we connect and get in the loop on that?
Well, the Center for Common Ground, which is Andrea Miller's group, does, and she'll be on next week, does postcarding, which I think is very effective. You mentioned to me the idea of going to Georgia. I think, well, Ray, did you want to comment, or do you want to, people focus
the
on
biggest thing we're going to need shortly will be canvassers starting next weekend.
Are you accepting canvassers from out of state?
We prefer not to, but those who want to, we prefer to get the donation and pay local people to do canvassing that are from that community. That's our preferred strategy. but for those who want to come in and do canvassing.
And where would those donations go to?
It would go to either Communities United for Justice, which is our organization that's out doing canvassing, or to the Center for Common Ground.
And you can post those links, Ray, if you would, in the chat. That'd be great. Michael, maybe you can take the airfare you're going to spend to go to Georgia and drive.
Yeah, that's what we've been telling people. And instead of paying airfare and all of that, because what you find is canvassing done by local people. As an example, right now, I need a way to pay for canvassers in Augusta, Georgia, one of the areas that was hit by the hurricane. For those who want to canvass from Payne College, which is a historically Black college and university in Augusta, and so we prefer to, instead of flying some people in and paying for them, to actually pay those college kids to get out and canvass in their local.
That makes sense.
If you can post those links in the chat, are you able to do that, Ray?
Sure.
Okay, I'll save the chat.
What you can do, Michael, is drive to Nevada, win a bunch of money at the crap tables, and then pay canvassers in Georgia. That would be a good trade-off.
Well, Nevada is also a swing state at this point, and
yes. Very much.
If I can help there, I don't know if you have anyone from Nevada today, but
well, John Brakey's in Arizona. John, are canvassers going out in Arizona?
Yes, they are.
And do you have a well? Andrea's common ground. I don't think Andrea's actually working in Nevada or Arizona. So if you have a canvassing group that can be supported, if you'll put their link in the chat, that would be great.
Good.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. John Steiner, do you want to introduce David Nevins? Thank you, Mike and Topanga. Appreciate that. You want to introduce David Nevins, John?
I will do it briefly. David, the dear old friend, co-founded and ran again with a good partner of ours for many years. The Bridge Alliance was, in many ways, still is the major organization in the Healthy Democracy Coalition of almost 100 organizations. He's also the energy and creativity behind the fulcrum, which I call the Associated Press of the Bridging Healthy Democracy, plus a lot of other things. And David's going to share with us two things. Firstly, the Election Overtime Project, which is actually starting, I think, in Arizona next week, going to other states, but also athletes working on college campus to get kids registered and voting. David, over to you.
David, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, John, for the kind remarks. I'm going to talk quickly because I'm out of time and I got a lot to say. The fulcrum.us, we reach about 400,000 viewers a month, plus many, many more, because a lot of our writings are picked up in local newspapers around the country. If anybody wants content related to the election, Ray, for example, if we can be of help to get the word out, email me directly at dnevins@fulcrum.us. That would be fine. Glad to do so. Two subjects. One is the Election Overtime Project, which we're doing in conjunction with the Election Reform Network, and we're focused on the 7 battleground states. And what we're doing is trying to provide journalists in these 6 states. We have experts who know the details, and we did a briefing report on the intricacies on each of the 7 swing states, so that journalists, and we're providing briefings. We already had a briefing for Arizona. We have Pennsylvania tomorrow. We were going to have North Carolina the day after tomorrow, but because of the hurricane, it's moved back a week. But these briefings, which are open to the public at large, and if you go to the fulcrum.us, you can find stories about these briefings, and you can attend the one tomorrow from Pennsylvania if you wish. They provide specific information to journalists on the intricacies of the overtime process in every state. Citizens should not fall for the narratives that are going to happen. In a football game, to use a metaphor, if there's an overtime, everybody knows the rules. Everybody accepts the rules in a football game. Well, it should be the same for elections, and we are going through that deep process. And I'll put a couple of links in chat. Here's one which will give everybody an idea. It's the Arizona briefing that we just had. And I'll put another one, which is a general, well, that's the one for now. But so that's one aspect of what we're doing. Anybody can ask me questions if they wish. And by the way, Stephen, who spoke earlier, is one of the great experts on the intricacies, and he's been a valuable resource to us. And I want to give a shout out to Stephen. The other aspect which someone spoke to is voter turnout. And I think I put the links already in, but we work with, I'm a strong believer in the impact of pop culture. We have to get people to turn out, because how many people are undecided at this point? And youth turnout is critical. And I think I put a link in chat already. I have a relationship, well, not a relationship, but a contact would be a better way to put it, with Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton. They just produced a great song, which will put on a lot of youth to get them to turn out. And we're working hopefully with them to amplify and scale that message. We got to get the young people to turn out. The other major project I'm involved in, and I could speak to if anybody has questions, is the Engaged Athlete Fellowship. And I think I already put a link in chat on that as well. We have athletes from all over the country trying to get their top stars of sorts on their campuses, and they are trying to get students to turn out. They're not telling them who to vote for. They're just telling them the only thing they're partisan about in representing us, they're partisan for democracy, and they're trying to get students to turn out throughout the entire country. I'll stop there if anybody has any questions.
I've seen that Lin-Manuel video. It's really great. If you can post a link to that, that would be good. And I know that you were highly responsible for getting Taylor Swift to endorse people turning out. I will note, by the way, since you're talking about athletes, she refrained from going to the Chiefs game this weekend. Apparently, but I'm waiting for them to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, for them to say that they're not going to have sex until the NFL season is over. But anyway, okay, well, that's terrific. I'm actually going to send you a couple of articles, David, one about the election and one about our campaign to solarize the 2028 Olympics, which is our own attempt to link the
you as well
movement.
as any of the listeners send me emails. I'll definitely respond. Two other aspects of this whole thing is we have a very close relationship with lawyers defending American democracy, and David Becker's group, Election Innovation and Research. They have attorneys prepared to defend poll workers should they feel that they're being obstructed, abused, or whatever. So we have those major contacts as well.
That's critical. And, John Brakey, and also on the call is Ray Lutz, are the two great experts on auditing. You talked about the overtime period, and they together really saved Arizona in 2020. So you should be in touch with those two guys. Very important.
That's
okay, Ray Lutz and John Brakey, if you guys will be in touch with David Nevins and John Steiner, that would be terrific. Okay.
I was putting it in my site because I will be contacting.
Yeah,
please, that'd be great.
And take them both very seriously. They're really the great gurus of small d democratic auditing, making a very big difference, and certainly will be in the limelight after this election if passed as prologue. Okay.
One quick last thing. I'm putting a link in. We did a 30-part series, the best series we ever did. We reached about 850,000 readers on Project 2025. So educating citizens on the narrative is critical, and I put that in chat as well.
Yes, please do, and your contacts as well, and I'll be emailing you, as I'm sure many others will be. All right, thank you so much. I want to go to Mike Hirsch now. Mike, for one of our co-conveners, and also from Progressive Democrats of America. Mike, you had a couple of announcements to make.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sluggo. I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now. We're going to be hosting Greg Palast for a special streaming and discussion of his film on voter suppression called Vigilantes, Inc. And I invite everybody to join us. It's going to be this Wednesday, so the day after tomorrow, October 2nd at 8 p.m. and 5 Pacific. Unfortunately, I understand that that's going to be a conflict for you, Sluggo, but we'll do our best to get our act together, not step on each other's toes moving forward. But I just want to underscore, some people seem to be skeptical that there is voter suppression still going on. And that kind of strikes me as like the guy who is saying, I'm shocked that there's gambling going on at Rick's. There is definitely voter suppression going on. Sluggo, you helped lead the way at PDA as well in auditing 2004 in Ohio, where there was all kinds of chicanery going on, but it goes back way before that. William Rehnquist used to personally challenge voters and harass people of color when they were trying to vote. And that was how he got on the radar of the extreme right-wingers who eventually elevated him to be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. It almost seems like voter suppression is a prerequisite for getting on the Supreme Court.
Well, John Roberts, of course, was, Mike, as you know, John Roberts, the current Chief Justice, was also a big part of that. Even in Florida 2000, he was part of the Brooks Brothers mob. So there you go.
Yes, he did. And there were a few others as well. So anybody who's skeptical about that, I wish I had your naive optimism in human nature. But the right wing has methodically and mechanically done all they could to shut down voting. And it goes to Paul Weyrich, who's one of the godfathers of the new right that emerged around Goldwater and propelled Reagan into office. And what he used to say is, we don't want more people to vote. Turnout does not help us. As right-wingers, they know they have the minority opinion, and high turnout hurts them. That's why they did everything they could to first gut the Voting Rights Act. And then as soon as the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court in the Shelby decision, all these states, including Texas especially, but many others, jumped on the opportunity to do all they could to disenfranchise and disadvantage voters of color using racism and other means. And in Ohio and in Florida 2000, and again in 2004 Ohio, they did everything they possibly could. They stationed voting machines that they knew were broken in high propensity Democratic areas. Not an accident. They took voting results and shipped them out of state, where they came back very different from when they went in.
They did that. Yep, Ohio 2004, they definitely did that.
There was a Republican group that sequestered themselves behind closed doors before issuing the vote count. And when they issued the votes, they had some precincts where there were more votes for Republicans than there were eligible voters. And others where the Democrats had 0 votes in the entire precinct, only for president. On the down ballot, it looked very normal. So, so please watch Greg's movie. Listen to all of us who are warning that not that this may go on or may be going on, or we're afraid that it's possible that maybe this is stuff that they've been doing year in, year out for several decades now. And it goes back to challenging people of color and saying how many jelly beans are in the jar before they let them vote.
Exactly. So, and in Ohio 2004, Steve Rosenfeld was part of that. We co-authored a book called What Happened in Ohio that was published by the New Press. Steve, you got to go, and then we'll go back to Ray, and then we're going to move on to energy. But David Nevins, thank you so much for that. We will be in touch with fulcrum.us. Steve, did you want to make a comment, and then Ray, and then we'll move on?
I would just say one thing that's people ought to keep in mind here. 2024 is not 2004. We got to be careful about not focusing on older narratives when newer stuff is going on. So what do I mean by that? If you go to the election education channel on Telegram, you will see how the Trump election integrity activists have really targeted and identified every step in the process, stuff that we did not know about in 2004. We didn't even know the names of these things. And we have we're on our second completely different set of computer systems, computers and software since then. And so that means there's ways to do things differently, positively and negatively, things to attack, more audit trails. We got to really focus on what is the current threat. And I'll just leave it at that, because, if we just keep saying voter suppression and voter purges, we're missing what the RNC is doing and about to focus on now. We've got to look at the litigation. We got to see what the targets are. We got to see what may or may not be impactful. We got to look at the rules where they have people in positions of authority who are sort of making last minute. They're like the refs are changing the rules at the last minute. That's what we're heading into. So I just want to just leave it there. I thank you. The good news, again, is that in just about every swing state except Georgia, Democrats and non-Trump Republicans control the apparatus. And in Georgia, so I just want to leave it there, because this is not going to end on election day. We may not even know the unofficial winner until a few days after that, and then the litigation, if Trump loses, of course, it'll come. If he wins, there's no problem whatsoever. But anyway, I just want to encourage
Thank
people.
you. Well,
just to
and we
look
will follow
forward,
your
not
coverage.
backwards.
We will follow your coverage, Steve. You were
Thank you.
a great thing that you came into Ohio and worked with Bob and me, and we had a memorable impact. I continue to tell people that if it hadn't been for the movement that was started in Florida 2000 and then election protection in Ohio 2004, that the outcome of the 2020 election would have been very different. And so, forewarned is forearmed. We're in a whole other world in terms of awareness of fair elections. Also, with John BRAKEY introducing digital scanning, a very, very big deal. This is a movement where we have had a very tangible impact, and we have no excuses now this year for any election theft that happens. We have 50 people with us. Ray McClendon, did you want to enter in a last word before we go to our energy discussion?
The last word for me is that none of this will matter if we don't get our people to the polls. Turnout is critical. We got to get the turnout up. We get the turnout up, then we can make a lot of this move. If we don't get the turnout, and as Steve just said, if Trump wins, there will be no problems with the election.
Yeah.
So let's focus on turnout.
Absolutely. And thanks again to Taylor Swift and anybody else, any other pop stars you can think of. We will greatly appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, everybody. This has been a phenomenal discussion here on election protection. Ray Lutz, great to have you with us as well.
Please catch the rest of the show at grassrootsep.org. And please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Green Grassroots Election Protection Coalition. Thanks.